Ladies and gentlemen, let me start by asking you something simple, but brutally honest. How many times in your life have you said the words, "I'll start next week," or "I'll start on Monday," or the grand classic, "I'll start on January 1st"? You've said it. I've said it. Everyone in this room has. But here's the hard truth: the difference between the winners and the losers of this world isn't their education, their money, or their background. It's the gap between when they decide and when they act. The losers wait for the calendar to give them permission. The winners don't. Every January, gyms overflow with people who swore this would be their year. By February, 80% are gone. They didn't fail because the workouts were too hard. They failed because the waiting built weakness. Waiting kills momentum before it's even born. Waiting creates psychological distance between the dream and the execution. Waiting convinces your brain that you're preparing when you're really procrastinating in disguise. Let's talk neuroscience for a moment. When you say, "I'll start later," your brain releases a small hit of dopamine, the same reward chemical you get when you actually do something productive. That means even though you haven't done a damn thing, your brain tricks you into feeling good as if you did. It rewards the intention, not the execution. That's why people spend their lives planning and preparing and manifesting, but never moving. It's biological self-sabotage. There's a part of your brain called the nucleus accumbens. It's responsible for motivation and reinforcement learning. When you delay action, you train it to associate comfort with inaction. Every time you say, "I'll start tomorrow," you reinforce that neural pathway. The longer you do it, the harder it becomes to break free. You're literally building a brain wired for hesitation. So when someone says they'll start on January 1st, what they're really saying is, "I need one more month of lying to myself." They want the illusion of control without the pain of change. But let me tell you this: change doesn't wait for your calendar. Opportunity doesn't come dressed in confetti and countdowns. It comes disguised as discomfort, uncertainty, and risk, and it's always right now. I once worked with an executive who wanted to start a company. Brilliant guy. He said, "I'll leave my job next quarter after my bonus." I told him, "You're not waiting for your bonus. You're waiting for courage." He didn't like that. 6 months later, the company he wanted to start, someone else launched it. They made millions. He called me and said, "I should have started when I said I would." No, he should have started before that. He waited for the perfect time and lost the only time that ever mattered now. You see, the perfect time is a myth created by people who are afraid to bleed for their dreams. It's a safety blanket for the weak-minded and a graveyard for potential. The most successful people in history never had perfect timing. They had imperfect beginnings. They started scared, broke, unready, and uncertain. But they started. Let's talk about Thomas Edison. Do you think he waited for the perfect year to invent the light bulb? No. He failed over 10,000 times. Do you think he told himself, "I'll start fresh on Monday"? No. He woke up every day and tried again. Because he understood that consistency, not the calendar, creates history. You think the Wright brothers waited for funding, approval, or January 1st to build their plane? They started in a bicycle shop. Ladies and gentlemen, a bicycle shop. They had no investors, no engineers, and no guarantee. They just had belief. They didn't wait to feel ready. They decided that now was enough. That's the mindset of people who win. They don't ask when, they ask why not now. And yet most of society does the opposite. They attach their goals to symbolic dates, birthdays, New Year's anniversaries, because it feels romantic. But discipline doesn't care about romance. Progress doesn't care about sentiment. The universe doesn't care that it's January 1st. It only cares whether you're moving. When I was studying behavioral neuroscience, one of the most profound discoveries I learned was about the neuroplasticity window. Your brain is always rewiring based on behavior, not intention. Every second you do something, you're carving new neural grooves in your mind. Every second you hesitate, you're strengthening the grooves of inaction. Waiting isn't neutral, it's corrosive. It eats away at your belief system. It tells your subconscious, I can't handle change yet. You might think you're waiting for motivation, but motivation is a mirage. It's never coming. Action precedes motivation, not the other way around. Once you take a step, dopamine rewards you, momentum builds, and the brain aligns. That's the secret. That's the science behind all achievement. It starts with the smallest act done immediately. You don't need to climb Everest tomorrow. You just need to lace your boots today. Because that single act of beginning, however small, rewires your entire identity. It signals to your brain, I am a person who does, not dreams. And that's where transformation begins. Ladies and gentlemen, let me share something deeply personal. Early in my career, I wanted to write a book on high-performance psychology. For years, I had ideas, data, and outlines, but no book. I told myself, I'll start when my schedule clears up. Guess what? It never cleared up. There was always something. Until one morning, I sat in my office and realized, if I die tomorrow, this book dies with me. That thought hit me like a train. I opened my laptop, wrote the first sentence, and didn't stop. 90 days later, the manuscript was done. Not perfect, but finished. Perfection is the enemy of progress, and waiting for ready is waiting for never. So ask yourself, how many dreams have you buried under the phrase, someday? Someday I'll travel. Someday I'll start that business. Someday I'll fix my health. Let me tell you, someday is where dreams go to die. The cemetery of regret is filled with people who thought they had more time. You don't have time. None of us do. You think you'll start in January. There's no guarantee you'll even see January. You think next year will be easier. Life doesn't get easier. You get stronger. But only if you start. Here's something fascinating. Neuroscientists have studied time perception in people who delay goals. Their brains literally compress time. Meaning, the more you delay, the faster your years feel. That's why you wake up at 40 or 50 wondering where your 20s went. They didn't vanish. You just spent them planning instead of living. That's biology. That's your brain clock punishing you for inaction. You know who never experiences that? People who are in motion. To them, every day feels full, long, alive, because the brain expands time perception when you're engaged. Time slows down for the present-minded. It speeds up for the procrastinators. So yes, waiting doesn't just waste time, it steals time. When people tell me, I'm just waiting for the right moment, I laugh, because the right moment was 5 minutes ago. The moment you had the idea, that was your green light. The problem is, most people are addicted to overthinking. They confuse movement with meaning. They think because they've read planned and researched, they're moving. But real progress doesn't happen in your head. It happens in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, listen carefully. Your life is not a rehearsal. You don't get to record the parts you messed up. You don't get to rewind. You get one take. And every second you spend waiting for January 1st is a second stolen from the only resource you can't buy back, time. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, but I need to prepare, I need to plan. Sure. But preparation without execution is just glorified procrastination. You don't need to have the map before you start walking. You just need the courage to take the first step. Clarity comes from motion. You don't find purpose by sitting still. You find it by colliding with the world. I want to tell you a story of a client of mine, a woman in her late 40s. She'd battled obesity for 2 decades. Every year, she'd tell herself, this will be my year. Every January, she'd buy new workout clothes, new equipment, new plans. And by February, she'd quit. The cycle repeated for years, until one day in October, she called me in tears. I'm done waiting, she said. I'm starting today. That same day, she went for a 10-minute walk. That walk turned into 30 minutes, then an hour. 2 years later, she'd lost 110 pounds. You know what she told me? Starting before I was ready saved my life. That's what this is about. It's not about fitness, business, or money. It's about power, the power to decide and act without permission. Because waiting weakens the will. The more you wait, the smaller you become. The smaller your self-belief, your confidence, your momentum. And eventually, you shrink into a person who only remembers what they wanted to do, not what they did. The tragedy isn't failure. The tragedy is hesitation. The truth is, your brain loves momentum. The moment you take one small step, it floods you with norepinephrine, a chemical linked to focus and alertness. It says, we're moving. Let's go. That's why once you start cleaning your room, you often end up cleaning the whole house. The action itself becomes addictive. But if you don't take that first step, nothing happens. You remain stuck in the fog of indecision. And indecision, my friends, is the most dangerous addiction of all. It masquerades as intelligence. It disguises itself as caution. But it's just fear, dressed up in logic, fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of looking stupid. That's what holds people back, not lack of opportunity. The world isn't short on chances. It's short on people with the guts to take them. Every January starter hides behind fear. They call it planning. But it's really avoidance. They're afraid of confronting their mediocrity today, so they postpone it until it feels safer. But guess what? It never feels safer. Growth doesn't come wrapped in comfort. It comes wrapped in pain, risk, and uncertainty. And the people who win are those who tear that wrapping open anyway. Let me tell you something about your nervous system. It's hardwired for survival, not success. When you try something new, your amygdala, the brain's threat detector, lights up. It screams, danger, because it equates change with risk. That's why you feel anxiety when starting something unfamiliar. It's biology doing its job, but it's also the same biology that keeps you stuck. The winners feel that fear and move forward anyway. The losers feel it and build excuses. The only way to rewire your fear response is to act while you're afraid. You don't overcome fear by waiting. You overcome it by walking through it. You ever notice how the first step always feels the hardest? That's because of psychological inertia. It's the same principle that governs physical motion. Objects at rest tend to stay at rest. Your mind works the same way. The longer you stay still, the heavier action feels. But once you start, even a little, you tap into momentum, and suddenly movement feels natural. The hardest part isn't climbing the mountain, it's taking the first step off flat ground. Ladies and gentlemen, I've met billionaires, Olympians, scientists, and soldiers, all cut from different cloth, all with different stories. But they share one common thread: they don't wait for the right time. They create it. They know that now is the only time that ever truly exists. They don't care if it's December 29th or July 2nd, they move. Because they know tomorrow isn't promised. They don't wait for the new year. They build the new year. You see, the mind loves deadlines, but deadlines without action are decorations. New Year's resolutions sound powerful because they give the illusion of order. But order without execution is fantasy. And the reason most people fail their resolutions is because they set goals with enthusiasm instead of discipline. Enthusiasm fades, discipline endures. You don't need hype, you need habits. You don't need January energy. You need relentless daily execution. Science backs this up. Studies from Stanford and MIT show that people who tie their goals to arbitrary dates, like New Year's, are far less likely to follow through than those who start immediately. Why? Because delayed starts create a psychological loophole. Your brain thinks the decision is handled, so your urgency drops. But when you begin instantly, your brain locks into a feedback loop of accountability. It starts seeking progress, not promises. I once coached a young entrepreneur who said, "I'm waiting for the new year to launch my product. I want the market to be fresh." I told him, "By the time you launch, someone hungrier will have already eaten your market alive." He didn't believe me. He waited. 2 months later, a competitor released nearly the same product and dominated. Timing didn't beat him. Waiting did. The market doesn't care about your calendar. It cares about your speed. Execution speed is the new intelligence. While others prepare, the winners move. Let's talk about the psychology of urgency. When people are told they have limited time, they act faster, think clearer, and execute harder. It's called temporal scarcity. That's why people suddenly turn productive before deadlines. But here's the catch: high performers don't wait for deadlines. They create them. They live as if every day is the final day to execute. That's why they accomplish in 1 year what most people can in 10. Their sense of urgency isn't triggered by the clock, it's embedded in their DNA. And that urgency, my friends, comes from one realization: life is finite, you don't have forever. Every day you wake up, you're one step closer to the end. Now, that might sound dark, but it's liberating, because once you accept mortality, excuses lose their power. You stop saying someday and start saying today. You stop romanticizing the future and start respecting the present. The clock is ticking, and it's not waiting for January 1st. I remember visiting a hospital years ago to speak with terminal patients about mindset and meaning. You know what none of them said? Not one person said, "I wish I'd waited longer to start." They all said the same thing: "I wish I'd started sooner." That line burned itself into my soul, because that's the final truth of life. You'll never regret starting early. You'll only regret waiting. Now, let's look at how this ties into neurochemistry. There's a hormone called cortisol, the stress hormone. When you procrastinate, cortisol spikes every time you think about your undone goals. That constant stress wears your body down, drains your energy, and clouds your mind. It's not the task that exhausts you, it's the delay. On the other hand, when you act, dopamine and endorphins kick in. That's why starting, even when you're tired, can make you feel alive. The body rewards movement. It punishes hesitation. So when you say, "I'll start next month," understand, you're not saving energy, you're poisoning your drive. You're building stress that compounds every day you don't act. You're letting your nervous system rot in the acid of indecision. Every goal postponed becomes a parasite feeding on your peace of mind. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not philosophy, it's physiology. Your body knows when you're betraying your potential. It reacts. It breaks down. You feel it in your bones, your fatigue, your insomnia, your anxiety. You think you're tired from life. You're tired from waiting. You're carrying the weight of all the things you said you'd do, but didn't. That burden is heavy because it's filled with unused potential. You want to feel alive again. Stop waiting for January 1st. Start now. Start messy, scared, unready, but start, because that's how you reignite your nervous system. Action is the antidote to anxiety. You can't think your way out of fear. You must move your way out. Let me give you an example that changed my perspective forever. A neuroscientist friend of mine studied stroke patients recovering motor function. The ones who began therapy immediately, within hours of the stroke, had drastically better recovery rates than those who waited even a few days. Why? Because immediate action reactivated the brain's plasticity window. Delay closed it. The same principle applies to your goals. The longer you wait, the harder it becomes to rewire your habits. The window of neuroplastic change starts shrinking the moment you hesitate. That's why now is sacred. The moment you feel the spark, you must strike. Because if you don't, your brain will kill the signal. You'll rationalize it away. I'll do it tomorrow, next week, when things calm down. But that moment, that signal, is your window. And once it closes, you lose more than time. You lose the chemistry of belief itself. Some of you are sitting here thinking, but it's not the right season for me. I'll start when I'm more stable. Stability is the killer of greatness. Nothing extraordinary grows in comfort. You want stability? Stay average. You want transformation? Move now, while it's chaotic. Because the storm you're waiting to avoid is the very pressure that will forge your discipline. The best time to start isn't when the waters are calm. It's when they're violent. That's when the strong are made. And here's the paradox. When you start in chaos, you create calm, because execution breeds clarity. The more you move, the quieter your mind becomes. That's what high performers understand. They don't seek motivation, they seek movement. They know that clarity is a result of commitment, not contemplation. I'll tell you another story about a soldier I once met during a research project on resilience. He'd lost a leg in combat, but refused to let that define him. I asked him, "When did you decide to rebuild your life?" He said, "The same day I lost it." He didn't wait for January 1st, a therapist, or divine timing. He started the moment life knocked him down. And because of that, he built a new identity before the pain could calcify. That's what separates warriors from warriors. Action in the moment of uncertainty. You've been taught to wait for the new year to reinvent yourself. That's a lie. Reinvention is not a calendar event. It's a moment of defiance, a declaration that says, I refuse to die in the same story. Every second is a new year if you decide it is. Every day can be your January 1st. You don't need a countdown. You need a confrontation with your own excuses. And yes, it will be hard. Change always hurts before it heals. Your old self will fight for survival. The habits that kept you comfortable will rebel. But if you hold the line long enough, they'll break. And what emerges from that battle is the version of you that was buried beneath the waiting. Remember, this pain is temporary. Regret is permanent. Regret is the echo of wasted time, and it never stops screaming. So stop waiting for the calendar to give you permission to live. The moment you woke up this morning was your permission slip. The moment your heart started beating was your green light. You don't need a date. You need a decision. Because every second you delay, someone else is starting. And the world doesn't wait for slow movers. It rewards those who dare to start before they're ready. Every empire was built on a moment of madness. A moment where someone said, why not now? That's how revolutions start. That's how legacies are made. The question isn't whether you can, it's whether you'll stop waiting to prove it. Because the truth is, you already have everything you need. You're not waiting for the right time. You're waiting for permission. Permission from your peers, your family, the world. You want someone to say, it's your turn. But life doesn't give out turns. You take them. You carve them with your will. The only person who can give you permission to start is the one staring back at you in the mirror. And when you finally realize that, something changes. You stop asking when and start asking how. You stop waiting for motivation and start demanding progress. You stop dreaming of January 1st and start living like every day is January 1st. Because that's what separates the elite from the average. They don't need a new year to become new. They make the decision now, then make the rest of the world catch up. I've watched people transform their lives, not because they were more talented, but because they decided they'd had enough of their own excuses. A man once told me, I started my business because I was tired of being broke. Simple as that. He didn't read 50 self-help books or attend a seminar. He just decided. And that decision, that raw, unfiltered decision, carried more power than any plan or strategy could ever hold. That's the science of identity. When you decide who you are, deeply, emotionally, physically, your brain begins to reorganize itself to match that identity. Neurons rewire. Hormones shift. Your behavior aligns. That's not magic. That's biology. You become what you commit to. And the moment you declare, I start now, you begin a neurological revolution inside your own head. You reprogram your sense of self from someday to today, from trying to doing. There's a concept in cognitive psychology called implementation intention. It's the difference between, I want to start exercising and at 7 a.m. tomorrow, I will run for 30 minutes. One is hope. The other is structure. But the most powerful version is this, I'm starting now. That eliminates negotiation. It bypasses doubt. It creates instant accountability because the time for debate is over. That's what high performers do. They kill negotiation with action. You think the world's greatest achievers waited for January 1st to become who they are. You think Michael Jordan waited for a calendar date to train harder. You think Elon Musk or Steve Jobs waited for their next chapter to take the first step? No. They created the chapter. They made now their starting line. They didn't wait for motivation. They manufactured it through movement. And I promise you, that's the secret. Motivation isn't a spark from the sky. It's the friction of movement. It's created by doing, not by dreaming. I've seen people stuck for years, brilliant, capable people, paralyzed by perfection. They want everything aligned before they start the plan, the money, the timing, the validation. But what they don't realize is that all those things arrive after you start, not before. The universe doesn't reward preparation. It rewards proof. Proof that you're serious. Proof that you'll move even when you're scared. Proof that you don't need everything to begin. You just need begin. And when you do, something almost supernatural happens. The world starts bending to meet your effort. Opportunities appear. People show up. Momentum builds. That's not luck. That's physics. Energy moves toward energy. Life aligns with action. Every time you move forward, you shift probability in your favor. Ladies and gentlemen, you are living in the greatest era of opportunity in human history. You can start a business from your phone. You can learn anything from your laptop. You can reach millions from your room. And yet, most people are still waiting for motivation, money, permission, approval, or January 1st. They're sitting on power they don't even recognize. They're surrounded by tools and drowning in excuses. Do you know what separates you from the top 1%? It's not resources, it's resourcefulness. It's the willingness to say, I start now. That's it. That's the fork in the road. That's the line between living a life of purpose and living a life of potential. Potential is cheap. Everyone has potential. Execution is rare. Execution is expensive. But execution is the only thing that pays in this world. And execution has no schedule. Execution doesn't take holidays. It doesn't wait for New Year's or perfect timing. It happens when you decide it's non-negotiable. It happens when you stop treating your dreams like hobbies. It happens when you look in the mirror and realize no one's coming to save you. No one's coming to start for you. The world rewards the starters, not the thinkers. Think about that. Every product, every invention, every movement that changed history began with someone who could have waited, but didn't. The printing press, the internet, they all started as messy, uncertain, half-broken ideas, but their creators didn't care. They acted because they understood that progress is born from pressure, not perfection. You don't need another year to think. You need 1 hour of courage. That's all. 1 hour where you stop lying to yourself. 1 hour where you start before the fear catches up. That single hour could rewrite the next 10 years of your life. You want to get in shape. Don't buy new shoes. Drop and do 10 push-ups right now. You want to start a business. Don't outline the business plan. Make the first call. You want to change your life. Don't wait for New Year's Day. Make this second count. Because if you can't do it now, when it's inconvenient, you'll never do it when it's convenient. Convenience is the enemy of commitment. If you can only move when it's easy, you'll never move when it matters. Let me tell you the harshest truth you'll ever hear. There is no later. There's only now or never. Latter is a word created by the weak to delay the pain of discipline. Now is the word of the strong. It's the language of champions. Every time you say, I'll start tomorrow, I want you to imagine yourself handing over a piece of your future to someone else, because that's what happens. Someone out there is working on your dream while you're waiting to feel ready. Someone out there is building the empire you were too scared to start. Someone out there is living the life you wanted because they started when you hesitated. And when that hits you, really hits you, it burns. It hurts. But that's good. That pain is the beginning of transformation because pain is awareness. Pain is truth. Pain says, I'm done living small. The difference between the weak And the strong is what they do with that pain. The weak numb it. The strong use it. They channel it into relentless, unstoppable execution. So ask yourself, what are you going to do when you leave this room? Will you wait for January 1st like everyone else? Or will you start now, while they're still planning? Because the world doesn't remember the ones who waited. It remembers the ones who moved. The ones who acted before it was convenient. The ones who built while others were sleeping. The ones who didn't need fireworks or resolutions. Only fire inside. You want a new life. You don't need a new year. You need a new standard. And that standard must be, I move now. I act now. I live now. Because the future belongs to the urgent, not the patient. Time is undefeated, ladies and gentlemen. It's the only opponent you'll never beat, but you can still play to win. And the way you win is by not giving it one more second of hesitation. You strike now. You push now. You build now. Because one day, whether you like it or not, the clock will stop. And the only thing that will matter is whether you lived your life on schedule or spent it waiting for one. If there's one thing you take from this moment, let it be this: the time to start is not tomorrow. It's not next week. It's not January 1st. The time to start is now. Because every second you hesitate, your potential fades. Every day you wait, your dream decays. But every moment you act, your destiny expands. The world doesn't need another person who's thinking about it. It needs another person who's doing it. So stop waiting for the perfect plan. Stop waiting for the perfect time. There's no such thing. There's only now, and now is everything. Thank you.